And then spent the next 4 years saying he was illegitimate. He was an illegitimate president.
Okay, well, first of all, she didn't say he was an illegitimate.
Yes, she did.
You tell me exactly what she said.
She said those exact words repeatedly.
I believe he knows he's an illegitimate president.
Okay. I mean, she conceded the election. Whether you're interpreting her disappointment at losing it as the same thing as Trump not conceding it, I don't know if that's where you're getting it from. But again, it's a tremendous false equivalency. I think on January 20th, 2025, he'll show up at the White House, whether he's invited or not. And I don't think that's going to be good.
He's gonna bomb in if he lost?
Yes. Oh, yeah. Bomb is a word I wouldn't even throw around lightly.
Oh, stop it. He's not going to do that.
Right. Like there was never an attack on the Capitol, Megan.
Oh, I hear you. But he's not going to show up at the inauguration.
Like they didn't show up at the Capitol and break windows and knock down doors and kill cops and chase.
They didn't do that.
And they didn't break windows,
they didn't
knock
kill
down
cops.
They of course did.
No, they didn't.
Who did? They died of natural causes that day?
Capitol Police Officer Brian Sicknick, the medical examiner, has determined that he suffered 2 strokes and died of natural causes.
Yeah, nobody died that day.
Cops?
No, not true. Who?
Okay.
Who?
Oh, I don't remember the names.
They didn't. There was Brian Sicknick, who died later after the fact.
Well, one person died that day. I think her name was Ashley Babbitt.
Yeah, thanks a lot for that, for mentioning Ashley Babbitt's name. That was pretty helpful. Nobody died that day. That's a great quote, Megyn Kelly, blood from the nose. But, Bill Maher, to his credit, seems to be completely in oblivion. And I suggest that cannabis is the cause. He is a wake and bake, bragging cannabis abuser and began using cannabis, I believe, to stop drinking, and now he's doing both. So taking a toll on the gapper.
Definitely. Now, on the other hand, Jimmy Dore just came out, and apparently he quit cannabis like 8 months ago or something. and he was just saying, his whole life is cleared up, and he's found spirituality. And
good luck with that, because I watched a little bit of his bullshit story. I mean, I'm glad he quit smoking weed. This is, again, for the 9 millionth time, this is one of the biggest proponents of smoking weed, now has stopped smoking weed because of the mental damage and unmanageability of his own life, to his credit. And I hope he does it and keeps doing it, because it'll provide him with a lot of clarity, hopefully, on the state of Israel.
I wouldn't count on. Now, back to the Bill Maher, Megyn Kelly interview. She did cling his clock multiple times.
No, absolutely. I mean, I wish you could have shown those clips while he was there instead of in post-production. It would have been nice to throw those in his face instead of a week later with your producers. But nevertheless, she did make a valid editorial point, and spot on for Megyn Kelly. I've never seen a guy so wrong so often on so many established facts in recent history. I'm not talking about Napoleon's time. I'm talking about a year ago. This guy cannot seem to gather any sort of facts that are not shown on MSNBC. It's astounding. It's astounding. Like, I'll go over and look at CNN just to see what they're blathering about and go, holy crap, this stuff's insane. But, nevertheless, I mean, he just stays in his bubble. And that must be some reinforced bubble, Eric.
Oh, yeah. You think so? I mean, especially he's such an independent thinker, an obvious observer. Right, and then he comes up and he's like, what's a WEF?
Right. I mean, he's the number one media. He's not a guy who's just a stand-up comic doing like Jerry Seinfeld type of observational humor. His incredible ability to be on television is based on media. He had a show called Politically Incorrect, if anyone remembers.
Yeah, no, totally.
He's the
agree.
number one media guy on HBO. For whatever that's worth, to not be abreast of the issues on the other side, not that you have to adhere to them, but to not even know they exist is breathtaking. It really is breathtaking.
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure. And on that note, we got somebody here joining us, but this is a perfect story.
Hey,
to cue
Brooklyn!
into.
Brooklyn's in the house. What's up, brother?
Yeah, I got your old Brooklyn Dodgers.
Got the old Brooklyn Dodgers out, which was great because I suggested that Trump rent out Yankee Stadium, the arch nemesis of the Brooklyn Dodgers. And, you know, Barnes, many people have done it. Nelson Mandela did it in 1990. Billy Graham has done it a lot. 80,000 sellouts, boxing matches. You know, he's up in a park in the Bronx and he had 25,000 people, you know, which is not a bad turnout for a 3,500 person permit, Robert. But rent the stadium. I mean, he went in and said hello, I think, during the Yankee game.
Well, you know who's a part owner of the Yankees?
Well, Steinbrenner is one.
Patrick Bet-David.
Exactly.
Patrick Bet-David. But the Steinbrenner family, you know, one's a convicted felon, the other's a born liar. If you want to listen to Reggie Jackson talking about Billy Martin and George Steinbrenner, of course, George Steinbrenner famously being convicted of illegal campaign contributions to Nixon, who we're covering right now through our Watergate series, Robert.
Yep, definitely. And you wanted to show off how well Trump is doing. He's got a lot of fans here.
Yeah, these photos are worth $1 million. I mean, these guys, when he said to that guy, I want to get a grill like yours, where did you get that from? I mean, what a great line to a rapper. One's called Sleepy Hollow. The other one is Big Jeff or something, or Big Chef. I forget his name, but the two of them came up on stage alongside Trump. And one of them had, look at these guys. Look at this. Look at this. This is incredible publicity. They must be ripping their effing hair out up in the Democratic Council of the Bronx, Robert. They must be really going, how the hell did this guy get up here? Look at this guy. This is like the MAGA Eminem, bro.
It is a very confusing situation.
This is MAGA M.
Oh, yeah. Well, you know, I haven't told you, Mark. We have a older black gentleman who in the area who's wearing all red with a Make America Great Again cap and a Trump sign on a bicycle who rides up and down a road all day long.
You got to like that. You know, when I first put on the broadcast on RBN, whatever it was, they were interviewing Hasidic Jews who were up there in droves and speaking very eloquently about law and order. I went, holy crap, I haven't talked to one of these guys in years. Last time I was in the Diamond District. And here's a guy on camera going, yes, we need Mr. Trump back. He was the best thing for us. You know, I'm in the diamond business, but there's people robbing us left and right, Robert.
They even had the shoes. They had the shoes.
They had the shoes, bro.
Oh, my God.
They had the shoes. That's great.
Oh, God. Trump should sell those.
Well, he is selling them somewhere.
He sold out, did he?
Yeah, he sold out. Yeah. Look at that. These crowds are insane. Now, I think, and this is just my opinion, I think that he's trying to put New York City in play by picking off the boroughs around Manhattan. Manhattan's never going to go for him, but he could get Staten Island. There's youth swaths of Brooklyn and youth swaths of Queens, Robert. And if he goes into the Bronx and he's able to pick off these boroughs, forget about Manhattan. That's never going to happen. And upstate is red. He could win the state of New York. It's not that crazy.
It might be, but I mean, it will be interesting to see. But the other utility, of course, is what you point out, which is the marketing and branding across the country to similar constituencies in close states. It's interesting they hadn't thought of this before, really. In other words, I mean, Trump's always going to be more liked in parts of New York that are ethnically diverse than other parts of the country. They relate to him, connect to him. He's a true New Yorker.
Yeah.
And he can use that to market to Detroit, to Milwaukee, to Atlanta, to parts of Vegas and Phoenix and places that are going to be definitely in play. And they're clearly creative with their branding, even better than the sort of traditional MAGA world. In terms of
the power of those ethnic photographs and that footage is unbelievable. You're absolutely right. Those can be cut into individual commercials and shown in the inner cities of Detroit and Philadelphia and everywhere else, and at least make them spend money against him at a minimum, Bob.
Well, there's definitely down ballot impacts in New York because New York has now legalized, despite them voting it down constitutionally. The courts came in and legalized it anyway, mass mail-in voting in New York.
Right. Yeah.
And so the congressional seats that got picked up in 2022 are all going to be in play.
Right.
So the better Trump does, the better it helps down ballot.
Oh, yeah.
For the House seats.
Now, what about the census counting all these illegal aliens who've shown up from other planets? Do they physically count them, Robert?
That may require a constitutional change.
Thank you.
Technically, apportionment is population based.
Thank you.
The reason for that goes all the way back to slavery.
Right.
That's kind of where that came from. That wanting to count people who are not capable, not allowed constitutionally.
Also, 3/5 of a man. That whole thing.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
But so they didn't prohibit apportionment based on citizenship.
Right.
And so that's probably now the other thing the census did is they deliberately undercounted in Republican areas and overcounted in Democratic areas.
For sure.
And they used the pandemic again as their pretext to do it.
Right.
That's going to be something that needs to be
probably
remedied by constitutional amendment.
Right. I mean, I could quickly see California regaining the lost congressional seats that they lost from people leaving with their feet because they can't take it anymore. If you have 3 to 4 million illegal aliens coming into the state in a 6-year period, I mean,
it's a way you can benefit politically without them ever voting.
That's right.
And that's people are only now putting that together because of the census apportionment.
The census thing, I didn't think. I mean, San Diego County is overrun. I mean, Orange County is getting overrun. These are red areas, the limited red areas of California, and they're overrun now. They've got them living in every square inch of both of those counties down there.
Oh yeah, it's a top issue across the country for a reason. Big issue also in the UK. The UK is going to have elections in 45 days.
Ooh, I like that.
And the working class voters hate everybody, because the Tories have sold out.
Right.
Labor is still a sellout. Liberal Democrats are not an option. So, Farage's Reform Party is surging, but because he's not the leader of the party, technically, most people don't know who the party is. They have
you're talking about the Brexit vote in general. When you say working class, you're talking about the Brexit.
And their number one issue is they thought Brexit would end all the immigration, and it hasn't.
Right.
And so they're very unhappy about that. Matthew Goodwin, a professor who covers populism globally, has been talking about this for a year, and there's a real opportunity for the Reform Party to have a surprise surge if they can just get identified. In fact, part of the reason the Tories called a quick election is they're trying to preclude the Reform Party from surging, and they're hoping they can bring back those voters who they've betrayed over the last 3 years on immigration, particularly.
Have you noticed an uptick in both jailings of political opponents and assassinations of political opponents?
Well, definitely over the last, obviously, last
couple of weeks.
Weeks.
Let's go. I mean, going back to even, which people forgot, the former prime minister of Japan. I mean, people forgot about that assassination, for Christ's sakes. And they seem to keep coming and coming and coming. If it's not, the jailing of Khan in Pakistan and others, it seems to be a combination of both is what I'm getting at, and recent. And
now they want to, Netanyahu can't leave Israel. That, many of the countries, Germany came out and said that they would enforce.
Well, they said that about Kissinger too, if you remember, Robert. The same thing.
I did remember.
Yeah, you didn't remember that, did you? They said the same thing about Henry. I can't go anywhere anymore, Mr. President. I can't even go to the bathroom. They're all over me. What am I going to do? Yeah, I mean, if you're convicted in absentia by that court, I guess traveling to Brussels is out. At least that part.
Yeah.
Wow, that's completely insane.
Yeah.
Somebody just brought this up. I forgot. I guess it's Harvey Milk Day, and Barnes covered Harvey Milk on a Bourbon with Barnes. So you want to share a little?
Yeah, basically it was just that, I mean, Harvey Milk became a martyr after the fact. I mean, he was kind of a marginal political figure, but there's some on the right that wanted to justify back at the time his murder. There was sort of particularly more within the police law enforcement community there in San Francisco, but also across the state. And because he's become this sort of gay rights icon that has triggered blowback on the right. The problem is the right, as you know, there's a part of the right that embraces everybody. They think all gay people are groomers and all gay people are pedophiles.
Well, the woman who's running the anti-groomer foundation is a white lesbian. So
exactly, Gays Against Groomers, a prominent group.
Gays Against Groomers is a popular 501c.
And part of that right that does that, they damage the right. And how did the left get away with at least certain parts of Florida, convincing them that a bill that was about please don't sexualize our kids anymore and teach sex ed to 6-year-olds? How are they able to recast that as, they just don't say gay? It's because part of the right has this habit of demonizing everybody that's gay and calling them all pedophiles and calling them all groomers.
Please stop saying that word, though, Barnes.
You're gonna get demonetized anyway.
As soon as you came on, they demonetized it.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm sure
trying. Yellow. But so my point to people was, you can be completely critical of gay marriage, all the rest, but I represent a lot of victims of abuse. Pedophilia is a very specific form of horrible crime, and we should reserve that judgment for the people that are guilty of it. That doesn't mean everything Harvey Milk did in his lifestyle is something I would endorse. Right. But let's draw a distinction and not jump on this tendency that I saw a lot of friends of mine on the right embracing.
Let me ask you this. Speaking about tendencies, I've noticed this tendency to waive or enforce the statute of limitations when it's Danny Masterson or Harvey Weinstein. But when it comes to P. Diddy, all of a sudden this guy Gascon, who's from Cuba, goes out the window. What is the deal with the statute of limitations? Is it that flexible, Robert? Is it up to the DA? Yeah. I mean, I thought it was set in stone.
Yeah, it's not supposed to be that flexible. Now, they've passed laws like they did in New York that in order to get Trump on that bogus lunatic civil charge.
Right.
And of course, now it's backfiring. There's a prominent Democrat that's now he's like, hold on a second. He voted for it. Never thought it would apply to him. The selectivity. I mean, it was amazing. I was on with Sky News talking about the insanity of the Trump case. Dershowitz published an article and said how insane the judge's behavior. And then if you read Courthouse News, the degree of lying that these people engage in is incredible. They describe the judges.
News is basically an industry newsletter about court. From what I remember of courthouse activity,
and it's been taken over by liberals and lefties. But it reflects, like, they had a judge that was in the courtroom for them, former judge, and he was like, "Oh, this judge has been so moderate and so mild mannered, and Trump's witnesses' behavior was so outlandish and outrageous."
You're talking about Robert Costello for those at home, right?
Longtime former prosecutor.
Yeah.
And that, the witness was terrible for the Trump team. And it's unfortunate the judge even had to deal with that horrendous nonsense in front of the court. Worst behavior. You see that. I mean, or if you follow people like Adam Klasfeld, or I think he was attached to Law and Crime, Dan Abrams' group. The used to be Law News with a Z back when I was writing.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's right.
I mean, the editor is really cool. Rachel Stockman, daughter of David Stockman.
Oh wow,
was a hardcore populist libertarian these days. From the famous Reagan era, or famous from that era, and famous because he was falsely prosecuted by a bunch of prosecutors.
I forgot about that. Thank you.
There were a bunch of people that actually pled guilty that then tried to undo their guilty pleas because they realized they pled guilty to a crime they didn't commit. Thanks to Stockman's exposure of the problems of the federal prosecutors, but yeah, you see the degree to which it's really two people watching. I forget what Scott Adams' phrase is. Two people watching the same
two screens, one screen, two films, something like that.
Yeah, that's it. One screen, two films. That really captures it. I mean, I think the hard part for Trump is solely whether that Manhattan jury has anybody on it.
Well, let me get into this because I'm ripping my hair out over this thing. I cannot see, and I said this the other day, and I've been saying it for a long time, I cannot see this jury acquitting him, no matter what the judge says. Robert, you know this. Okay. Yeah. the jury comes back, and let's just hypothetical this thing for 5 seconds. The jury comes back and we find him guilty on seven of the 34 felonies, right?
Yeah,
Whatever
that'd be the kind of way they would do to justify. We really weren't prejudiced.
Yes, they find him guilty of 7. Now, here's your choices. Marchand remands him into custody immediately. Immediately. He says, bailiffs, remand the defendant into custody. He goes through the little door, and he's taken on the little bus to Rikers Island. Okay, that's number 1. Number 2, Marchand says, you've been found guilty. Sentencing will be in 3 weeks. I expect to see you back, blah, blah, blah. Okay, that's the second opportunity. The third is that he's innocent, which I don't think is going to happen. I don't think he's going to get probation from Marchand. I don't think that's going to happen. How does this play out, assuming that the jury comes back with X amount of guilty verdicts on X amount of felonies, Robert?
The problem the judge would have is twofold. The sentencing guidelines would still call for probation in New York.
Right.
And of course, they've been letting people out on a lot worse charges. So that's issue 1. Issue 2 is bail pending appeal. So obviously, he has a right. So he could deny bail pending appeal, but that immediately goes to the New York Appellate Court. My hunch is that the whole goal of this case depends on what the judge is up to. If he's totally insane, then he may try to sentence or remand Trump and deny bail pending appeal.
Right.
That would
Which is what I think he's going to do. That's my opinion. And I suggest that the CEO of the Trump organization may agree with me at this point, because he's back in Rikers Island for the second time. So he's been remanded twice, Robert.
Yeah.
And that's his boss, who's now going to face similar situations. So there is a precedent for this in New York right now.
Yeah, I think my view is, so I think on the legal side, they wouldn't have that occur because of the issue, because of what the guidelines call for in bail pending appeal. Legal standards favor Trump, but also because of the politics and the political blowback. So even if Marchand does it, I think it gets overturned very quickly. I think Marchand understands that this entire case is about not securing a conviction that gets affirmed, because he's shown no interest in even pretending to be fair on the record. And I think his goal is solely get a conviction. The conviction will destroy Trump in the election, and that will end it. And he doesn't care if a year from now the New York Court of Appeals comes in and says, oh, it was always a bogus case, because he thinks by then Trump will have not been elected president.
I think he's going to be remanded, and they're going to quickly bail him out of Rikers the same day. I think they're going to get a photo of him.
They have an issue even doing anything vis-a-vis Secret Service.
Secret Service is run by a guy named Joe Biden and the Department of Homeland Security. Ask RFK how well the Secret Service is working for him. So the Secret Service is politically controlled, always has been. You can ask Rowley, who worked for LBJ during the Kennedy assassination, about the independence of the Secret Service. That's a crock. I don't mean that to you, but I'm saying their independence is a crock.
Oh, no doubt.
Right.
It's just, this would be, if anything happened, it would be utterly humiliating.
They would celebrate like they did, half the country did when JFK got shot. People forget that they were cheering in half the country when he got his head blown off. So again, it depends where your ox is being gored.
To a degree, it's just going to, I think they think that would, because for example, there were people that worried that was going to happen at the bail stage. And I said that because they're cognizant of this, I think their whole goal is just to secure the conviction and hope that impacts the court of public opinion. That's why he rushed the trial the way he did. That's why he didn't try to make this impregnable from appeal. Didn't care. He knows that the Supreme Court could come down at any point, issue an immunity ruling that guts the entire verdict.
Well, we know that, but I'm saying on Tuesday, let's say, or next Friday, the jury comes back. They go out on Tuesday, Wednesday, or whatever. They come back quickly because they want to go home themselves and watch the Yankee game.
If you're Trump, Marchand orders you to jail, you just got elected president. I mean, it's going to be that.
It could very well be. It could very well be. I just trying to figure out what happens the second they issue that guilty verdict. What is the move in that court by Marchand?
The judge shows how impartial he's always been by scheduling sentencing for 3 months out.
Okay. All right. Well, that's what you think is going to happen? Or
yeah.
Okay. Because that's
and he wants the verdict to sit in with the public. And this is how they think.
All right.
They really think just get a guilty verdict. No matter what the polls say now, they'll change.
So
Nobody's
no
gonna elect
bail.
a
No, it's not a
convicted
bail
felon.
pending appeal. He's not going to be remanded. You're saying?
No.
All right.
I'd say about 98% chance. Not
Okay.
remanded. There's a 2% risk
Well,
because
we'll see.
they
We'll
keep
see.
doing more crazy stuff than I can
Right.
imagine.
We'll see.
But
It's funny because Dershowitz
it would
said,
backfire horribly.
again, it depends on you define backfire. Backfire for who?
With enough independent voters and Trump voters.
Okay.
Like right now, Trump's a little bit at risk on turnout issues. A lot of his voters are low. Usually it's a Democratic problem. This time it's a Trump problem.
Well, it's definitely a Democratic problem also, because if you've got a 77 or 75% approval rating among African Americans for Biden, you're off by about 20 points right there, Robert. They need a 95%, as you're well aware, 95% Black African American vote to win any election nationally.
But like the most committed voters lean Biden. Once you get into any marginal voter group, people who didn't vote at all in the last several elections, going for Trump by 20 to 25 points.
Right.
And so
you're also going to have a lot of sit at home, I'm not going to vote Biden people too.
Bingo. Some people are never going to vote for Trump. But
it's in that low propensity group.
Yeah.
Trump's getting so many of those. Like the people that showed up at the Bronx rally. Those are probably a fair number of those people skipped voting, didn't care to vote. But if you do
that's
something
because
like
they themselves were in Rikers Island for a long period of time, as you could tell by that crowd. Let's face it, Robert, that was not American apple pie crowd.
Yeah,
that's true. Well, before we go on any further, I have got to take this opportunity to hawk some coffee.
Oh, get some of this stuff, Robert. This thing is rocket fuel, for Christ's sakes.
Yeah, I didn't know if you know this, Robert. We've been working with Moondo's Coffee. They're the anti-Starbucks, but now we have our own flavor. America's Untold Stories Supreme Breakfast Blend. And it's an excellent combination of Sumatra, Manheling, and Mexico Chiapas. Essentially, they're opposites attracting each other. One is a darker Sumatra, old, dark, kind of like somebody I'm with, and then you have a brighter Mexican Chiata blend. So it's sort of like us.
Well,
you have a younger, brighter blend.
Region is the source of many great Mexican revolutions, right?
Right. Alex Sahente was the demanding one. He worked with Che Guevara. Only one of them got their hands chopped off. Alex Sahente did not.
Did you see Tucker was interviewing Felix Rodriguez?
Yeah, what was that?
Can you imagine Felix was like,
I'll tell you why.
He was volunteering some opinions on the Kennedy assassination. I was like, maybe Felix knows a little more than what he's,
Okay. I found out what's going on with this thing. Hialeah is opening up, because they emailed me a press release. In Hialeah, in Florida, in the Miami neighborhood, they're opening up a Cuban Bay of Pigs museum of survivors of the Bay of Pigs and prisoners who've come back, and they've gotten memorabilia that is unbelievable. Entire tanks, ships, airplanes. I mean, the guy went into a whole detail to me about.
Are they gonna do like a separate section on the planes that didn't come?
Yes, the planes that were called back by JFK, so we had to blow his head off 2 years later. And weapons and things of that nature, but it's for the obviously the anti-Castro Cuban community in Miami, but it's got a lot of funding and it looks like a huge museum. And I think that's why he's been making the media rounds. But that's my hunch.
Did Tucker, I didn't watch the interview. I saw snippets. Did Tucker ask him about his role in Iran-Contra? He was a key witness at the Iran-Contra congressional hearings.
That's right. I forgot about that. I didn't see the interview either.
Dude had a finger in every deep state op for the last 60 years.
Yeah, it's him and his partner, Ted Cruz's father, of course.
We were trying to tell Sidney Powell's people during the whole election stuff. I was like, please don't tell me that your source is a ex-Cuban intelligence source. And I'm like, yeah, it's an ex-Cuban. I was like, oh,
okay. So I just got back. I just got back from Miami. I just got back.
Intelligence. Ignore.
I just got back from Miami a half hour ago. And what local news is going crazy because DHS took a delegation of Cuban diplomats from Cuba and intelligence people on a tour of the security of Miami International Airport. Local news is going absolutely batshit crazy. This is the 3 days of this news story down in Miami. They apologized for it. The officials, nobody knows how it happened. They said this is the third such tour of Cuban officials. Why they have to see the security of Miami International Airport, that was not explained. the Cuban community in Miami is going batshit crazy, Robert, over this bizarre.
Has Biden just given up on Florida?
Yeah, I think so.
Now thinking he'll go, try to satisfy some of the hard left that's unhappy about.
Yeah, that's what I thought. That was the only thing that made sense to me, or it was just an.
Obama went down there, and Ralph Castro had to drag his arm up, but
don't forget he sent Jay-Z down there as his secret CIA rendezvous
about that forever. When hypothetically speaking, I might have been in Cuba. They're all talking about right after when Jay-Z came down. There was like a huge.
There were two things he did, and there's a long history of this. Don't forget, Berg, the catcher, Mo Berg, was sent behind enemy lines in Germany to kill a physicist who was working on nuclear stuff. Great catcher for Detroit. He sent Rodney, what's his face, from the Detroit Pistons to interface with the basketball team with Vice in North Korea. And people remember that. At the same time,
Dennis Rodman. He became friends and smoked cigars with the North Korean leader.
Right, and that was a deep state, Obama move, and as was Jay-Z going to Cuba. People forget these two moves were totally run by Obama and were totally spy movies in the making.
Maybe Beyonce should have said no, because maybe that's where Jay-Z met his Becky, was down in Cuba. Ooh,
that's a tough one. He was going to send Diddy, but would have had some blowback.
Yeah, that wouldn't be so good. I always remember the South Park version of Diddy. Or maybe it was Diddy, or was it Kanye? No, I'm pretty sure it was Diddy. It was that he was going around shooting people to vote. You have to vote. You have to get out. This is when he was part of that whole get out the vote stuff.
Right.
And they combined it with the animal rights stuff. And they had the animal rights people being people who really love animals.
Right.
And that was brilliant. It's amazing how South Park has been cutting edge. And it's somehow still on the air.
It's still on the air.
It grandfathered in. I feel like it was grandfathered in, honestly, because nobody could start a show. They've been doing it so long.
It's the only one they allow from the deep state to operate. And they probably sit around and watch it themselves going, look what they figured out, Bob. Look at these guys. Let's kill them. No, don't kill them. Let them keep going. I love this crap.
Speaking of killing them, I have some breaking news that came in literally 2 minutes before we started. Alec Baldwin is going to trial.
Yeah, I got that officially email too. Yeah, they sent me an email.
They denied his motion to dismiss.
Yeah.
So July 10th, folks.
When is that? Oh, yeah. So I assume you're going to cover it live, right?
We're going to get down. We're going to try to get down there.
Try to figure it out. Between this or layback law, something.
Are they going to broadcast it? I assume they were going to video broadcast.
Well, if they did it, Hannah, I'm sure they're going to broadcast that one. I hope
they will. I think they will.
Now, that was the giveaway that the judge in New York only cared about securing a guilty verdict. He didn't think that the trial would look bad for Trump. That's why he wouldn't allow its broadcast.
How does Dershowitz end up not being kicked out and everyone else was kicked out of that courtroom?
That's fascinating.
And then fascinating. And then Dershowitz says, I've never seen anything like this in my 60 years of being in a courtroom. And that's in different countries. The diatribe by this Colombian Bogota military junta descendant, Juan Marchand, apparently went so batshit crazy that Dershowitz had never seen anything like this in his legal career.
Yeah, that's what he said. I mean, it's insanity at so many levels. I mean, Good Logic is still trying to challenge the gag order, and the Court of Appeals apparently canceled his oral argument, and they're just hoping to run out the clock so they can never issue an order on what is the most unconstitutional gag order issued in modern America. I mean, it's just, but that was another sign that all he was obsessed with was securing a verdict that would damage Trump in the court of public opinion. Wouldn't allow it to be broadcast, shut out the media when he went crazy in front of the witness and made ridiculous accusations and allegations and claims he was going to strike testimony and a whole bunch of other things he had no legal entitlement to do. And then not video broadcasting it. That it's all about they have convinced themselves that if they get a adverse verdict, they can prevail. The question is, what do they do when it doesn't move the needle in terms of the public opinion over the next several months?
Well, we'll see. But Cory Booker got about $340,000 out of Marshawn's daughter in Democratic fundraising money. So, I mean, it's obviously having an effect, helping out down ballot people.
I mean, he'll get rewarded in New York.
Right.
There's no doubt about that.
What do you think?
The
Supreme Court or appellate court, or
if the wrong person wins, yeah, I'm sure that he's going to find his situation improving quite a lot for sure. Okay, we probably will need to go over the big case in our world. Now, Mark, I know you're not as deep into LawTube, obviously, but you do know Nick Rekieta, I believe. Nick has come on, like when our channel got nuked, he was one of the people who came on, helped bail us out. But I also think it's kind of important with you, and I'm sure Buns would agree, that you work with addiction quite a bit. And I think that we are seeing somebody suffering from addiction that has literally turned his world upside down.
And making horrendous decisions, including really, really stupid legal decisions that like he made today. He's in complete denial. And when I saw it, because originally I wasn't going to say a lot, Nick was a stand-up guy during Rittenhouse. He's a stand-up guy for a lot of people. People get into personal problems. That's their business. Generally, that's my view on things. But when I saw him, doing two things. One, when I saw what drugs were combined potentially involved, then he's risking his life. He's lucky not to be dead, to be frank about it. And then the second part was when I saw him today at the arraignment, I was like, oh, he's making suicidal legal decisions.
He's defending himself, Bob, or what's
not only
worse,
that,
he's trying to defend his wife and the other complainant who had already been released. And correct me if I'm wrong, Barnes, it's ringing bells in my head that she flipped, that they probably already have her to testify against them being in the house.
Well, and this is he knows this as well as anybody. That's what.
Wait. Fill me in here. I don't know anything about this except. He was arrested for what charge?
He was arrested for. He was originally arrested for 2 charges. They upped it to 3 charges at the arraignment. So he's now facing charges for first-degree drug possession, over 25 grams of cocaine, along with
ketamine
and an unidentified brown substance. Then having a gun next to drugs, basically. There's Second Amendment issues with that under Bruin, but that's
child endangerment.
And then child endangerment. Those 2 are misdemeanors. The top count is the problematic one. In Minnesota law, that count, up to a 30-year sentence. The bigger problem is that even for first offenders, the recommended sentencing guideline is 5.5 years in prison. So his wife, and the other woman.
Wait a second. What's with the wife and the other woman? Are they all?
They were all 3 charged with all of them.
And how were they apprehended?
At the house.
It was a welfare check. Apparently, his pastor is required by law. They have to turn in people, and I guess the pastor filed a police report on May 16th, and the cops went to do the welfare check today. They got a hold of Nick. He was driving in his car, and they
got a search warrant.
They arrested him. They had a search warrant, but they arrested Nick. Put him in the car, detained him. They knocked on the door. A child or somebody opened the door but wouldn't let them in. They asked Nick for the code to get in the house. He refused it. They busted the door open.
Oh my God!
And then went, found all this stuff. Apparently, the house is a complete wreck, according to the documents.
And basically in the master bedroom, they found the drugs. Now, I think there's an issue with how they've measured the drugs. They're apparently.
I was just going to say 25 is 3 grams under an ounce. The ounce is usually a cutoff legal wise. It's surprising to me that it was a 25, if that's the truth of what you're saying.
It was combined to be 20. There's like 3 little baggies, 1 big baggie.
Added up to 25 grams?
Yes.
Well, it's under 25 grams.
Right.
Yeah. Adding the packaging. I'm pretty sure the packaging doesn't count.
And let me tell you something. Also, when you boil down the drugs, the weight becomes even less because half of that is cut with inositol usually, which is what I did. Yep. So as a former drug dealer who sold a lot of coke, half of the weight is usually a non-drug substance.
I think so. The potential defenses, aside from search warrant suppression and other issues, is that between the defendants is a possession defense. As I say, it's not mine. And so so there's an obvious conflict between the three. But if you're Nick, you know how this always should shake down. So if anybody's ever in this situation, you hire counsel right away. The old phrase, the lawyer that has a client has himself for a client has an idiot for a lawyer and a client.
Yeah.
And particularly, but what's worse here is trying to be the lawyer for the other two. Hey, I can manage this. I can control this. Everything's going to be okay. It's that mindset.
Is that the addict mindset?
No, it's just the mindset of a guy who's a lawyer who, was trying to save his wife or do something here. I don't know what his mindset is. I mean, he's obviously a lawyer himself. Is he a member of the bar in Minnesota, Robert?
He is. But what you do right away is you call up as soon as he got arrested.
Yeah,
you can go inside the jail. You can call for a lawyer.
Yeah,
you call a very sophisticated.
Is he bailed out or is he incarcerated?
He's getting bailed out today.
No, he's on locals right now talking. Apparently.
Yeah.
Oh, all right. Well, I don't know anything about it, but
we'll see if that's a smart move or not.
Viva was asking me about it this morning, and I said if he needs some help, he could I gave him my number. He could call me if he needs some help, which is a separate issue. It's not good at all. He might be 5 years from being done using. And just because you got arrested, I know a million people got arrested.
No. I'm saying good that you offered help, dude. Jesus, calm down.
No, I am totally calm. I've been doing this for 30 years. I know how it works. Simply because you want to help your friend doesn't mean he's going to get help, is all I'm saying, Eric.
Oh, yeah.
I know.
I know plenty of people who've been to jail 15 times who were much bigger than Nick Rekieta and didn't want any help. Just getting popped isn't enough.
Well, that's my worry, is because he's on locals right now, which doesn't bode well. He's a live streamer. His whole live stream personality is to have drinks on live streams. All it takes is one live stream. He's having a drink. He already agreed today. No drinking, no this, no that. And it's going to be hard because he's getting tested.
Right near him that was founded in 1949 called Hazel's Den. By a couple of guys that came back from World War II. And it's used as the Minnesota model. It's actually called the Minnesota model, and that's Hazelden. That's where he should be. Forget about this. He's got to get into Hazleton because they'll treat him exactly the way he should be treated, and it's 2 inches from his door.
If you're in this situation, you hire, there's plenty of lawyers that specialize in drug defense. You get that lawyer. You tell that lawyer, there's 2 other defendants. I need you to get them counsel. They get counsel. So everybody's counseled up with their own separate counsel, but they're on a joint defense agreement. This happens all the time in the drug world. Mm-hmm. So this is not a world Rekieta himself has in-depth familiarity with. You can't represent. There's conflicts of interest. There's 100 other problems with trying to control the case yourself. And you get this, and that gets the confidence of the other people, right? The other people are like, oh, I've got independent counsel. I've got sophisticated counsel. It's all paid for by, Nick pays for all those counsel. Okay, everything's fine. You feel a degree of loyalty to them. If they're ever going to go a different direction, then what happens is that lawyer tells you, by the way, I can't be part of the joint defense anymore. I can't represent them. Someone else is going to have to represent them. Practically speaking, there's kind of a cost barrier, right? Mm-hmm. Because you secured their counsel. If they try to secure different counsel, they have to pay that out of pocket. That's usually a hindrance to them suddenly turning and making other accusations or allegations. And he, of all people, knows enough about that world and knows that's how you do it. And so when I saw he wasn't doing that, and he was telling the judge, hey, don't worry, I'm going to represent everybody.
Yeah, he's not done yet, Bob. He's not done yet. I mean,
no, that's exactly how I took it.
Right, he's not done. When he gets done and gets a lawyer, the first thing he should do is check into Hazleton, get himself off the playing field. And then the lawyer can bring him in for whatever hearing they have going on physically and say, my client is in Hazleton, the greatest rehab in the world, Your Honor. He's dealing with his problems.
He even has time because the omnibus is not until August.
Yeah,
August.
So he could have 3 months of good performance.
Exactly. This is done, as you know, this is done in LA every single day here.
Exactly. And there's sophisticated counsel that have all the connections in Minnesota. I mean, Minneapolis, Prince, it's a place that has plenty of good drug lawyers.
Oh, yeah.
So So when I saw him do that, I was like, he's in complete denial. And he's going to screw himself over. Because
well, I mean, Downey told me I've known Downey for years, but only Corcoran State ended Downey's using career, Robert. Not 28 rehabs. Corcoran State, the institution, the prison, ended Downey. That's why he stopped.
I was going to ask about I always had some doubts about rehab. But
it works if you do the work and you're serious about it. I mean, but there are people.
You have to want it yourself.
Of course.
It's not like going to rehab change. What was shocking to me was the experience. I mean, you wrote a whole book about it. My experience with the Malibu rehabs. So,
by the way, that's a separate model called the Malibu model. I mentioned the Hazleton model. There's another model called the Malibu model. Go on.
So the Lenny Dykstra took me on a tour of it. So Lenny he had plenty of stories, which is crazy to say for another day. But so I met the head of the rehab, and I was talking to the rehab guy, and I was like, okay, how do you measure progress? How do you measure success? And Lenny kind of hinted this to me beforehand, that this was all kind of a quasi scam. It was his experience with rehabs, because the person's not committed to themselves, right, but also some of the people who run these rehabs. And I was next to this guy, and he said he's one of the most prominent Malibu rehab people around. And he said, if they're sober for a day. And I was like, and he just kind of laughed about it. And I was like, oh my.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a wide open, like you said, I've written a book about it. It's a wide open field without regulation. And the state of California with Prop 36, when it started, did not want any regulation because they were releasing prisoners under Prop 36 into rehab. So they needed as many rehabs quickly as possible. So the only ruling was they had to have a septic tank that handled a family of 6. And you could only have 6 people per rehab. So that was the only thing that Sacramento ruled in Prop 36. But yeah, it's an unregulated, it's a Wild West.
The other thing I thought is, from what I had heard, and to what degree is this? So if somebody is using what do they call it? The Calvin Klein, the CK, special K, if they're combining
cocaine, you're talking about ketamine or
if they're combining the two and and alcohol with it. Yeah. Like I had heard that was a very high risk of death, frankly.
How old is this guy? 45 or something? How old is he? Yeah,
somewhere in there.
That's what he looks like. Yeah, he's at risk because he's so old that his heart can't handle stuff that you can handle when you're 22. That's the risk that he's under when he's pushing 50 years old, doing
42.
42. Okay, when he's in that area, you're going to have heart damage. And you're going to have a lot of different physical things happen to you from the longevity of doing it.
And I guess it damages your liver because,
absolutely,
he's lost a lot of weight, and he almost has jaundice in terms of his face and his.
Yeah, he probably has
the tremors too.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. I mean, I've seen worse people. Dude, I remember George Thorogood was drinking Sterno. I mean, dude, I mean, there are stories that go on and on and on, but I mean, you can't.
How much do you need? Now, my understanding is withdrawal can be medically risky if someone's in.
Yeah, he's got to be institutionalized. That's why. I mean, rehabs are basically what they're designed for is a 7-day detox. The rest of it is gravy. The rest of it is taking you to meetings, getting you a therapist. All that stuff it's really to put you in an institution so you can professionally detox, because hospitals are not going to let you in anymore. You can't go to a hospital and detox. You have to go to a rehab to do that. They don't want any part of it. It's a messy thing for hospitals. So what a rehab really is, if it's done right, and Hazleton runs a great place. So does Betty Ford out here. There's a number of A-type rehabs that have great reputations. And what they do is they monitor your blood pressure, they monitor your vitals, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 days of you detoxing. And then they start to weave you into group therapy, into private therapy, into going to meetings. It's kind of like kindergarten for 12-step meetings and learning how to survive on the outside, because anybody could stay clean and sober in a rehab. It's when you get out, how do you function back in the real world? So they kind of lay the foundation for you, showing this is what you have to do. This is, you got to get a sponsor. They take you to meetings. They teach you the ropes for whatever the price is. Now, those are nonprofits, Betty Ford and Hazleton. So those are about, I want to say 35K a month, 30,000 a month, around in there, which is moderate compared to the ones in Malibu, Robert, because those could be 60 to 100, 150, 175, a month, and no health insurance covers it.
Mark, I had a question. Somebody said in the report that he had marks on his arms that were similar to drug users. Now, a lot of people are saying injected. Could it also be like scratching or something? Are there other marks?
You'd have to see the marks and tell.
Well, the question is whether he's injecting ketamine.
Yeah, you could tell immediately. I mean, if he's got brown powder there, I'm assuming that is heroin, that he's using heroin at some point, because
they hadn't identified it, so that made me wonder whether it was.
Well, I don't know what it is, but I'm just saying usually people combine cocaine with heroin. It's quite common. I mean, that's what killed Bellucci.
So you could combine that with ketamine and lots of alcohol.
Yeah, ketamine is now being dispensed out here as a antidepressant drug intravenously. So he may have been doing that. That may be the marks on his arms. I'm not sure if he was getting intravenous ketamine, which is now a common thing. They're pushing this whole ketamine and other drug legalization out of San Francisco, hallucinogens and anything else they can get their hands around, to make everything legal, So ketamine is on that list. There's Croakers now in Beverly Hills that you go to see who will give you intravenous ketamine while you're there, and you can leave afterwards. I mean, everyone knows it's a Croaker situation, but there's a lot of that around, and probably in Minnesota too.
Yeah, his lawyer may advise that it's useful, given he's got 5 kids. He take the fall, say it's all his, none of it's hers. She walks. Yeah. He cuts a deal. That situation for him to cut a deal is a combination of figuring out a way to challenge the search warrant or some aspect of the execution of the warrant, and a combination of he took it seriously. He's going to rehab. He got medically treated. He's been fit. He's been clean for this period.
He's got to get into rehab. He's got to get into rehab. That's the number one thing he's got to do. The number one thing he's got to do is get outside counsel. The number 2 thing he's got to do is get into Hazleton, and get his wife into another facility, maybe Betty Ford, separate the 2 of them into 2 separate facilities. I'm sure he's got some money to pay for this. And then the kids have to.
The family's near. It's already taking care of the kids. They have both.
Oh, okay, all right. So
that's
fine.
So they're in a position, and they're homeschooled, so that that can be managed.
Less of a
I don't know his drug history, so I can't really talk.
He has no prior convictions, and this, according to people in his community, this is something that's accelerated badly within the last 6 months.
Okay, but he didn't start.
I didn't know about it at all. Yeah, I was up in Minneapolis like 3 weeks ago, and I said, "Hey, I'm down at a cigar bar. You want to come down and hang out?" And I didn't hear back from him until I was back on a plane back. I said, "Oh, sorry, can't come."
For what it's worth, I looked at his show briefly. I looked at his show briefly like 2 years ago in the middle of the night, and I said, "This guy's high as a kite." So that was just my quick take on it, because anyone who's staying up all night doing a show like that is using substances. So that was just my take. I don't know if it was true, but that was the first thing that entered my mind.
I'm briefly about all that. I mean, briefly. I've had people close to me that were full-blown alcoholics. I didn't realize it until.
Unless you're either an addict or trained to look at it, you're not going to really see it. You know what I mean? Because it's so pervasive, and it's people completely.
And they get really good at hiding it. The people that I knew, were just that. Now, but you're right. People like you who have been around it, they would spot it real fast.
Yeah.
Whereas the people who haven't been around it much have.
Well, I don't know who he's around in Minnesota. He must be maybe in his own house 24/7 doing a show. He may not even go out for all I know. People nowadays have home studios. You got your kids homeschooled. I mean, you get a lot of isolation today, Robert. If you don't have to go to a job and leave and drive, you can last a lot longer. You know what I mean? You can last longer if you're not going anywhere.
Well, I guess you probably know more about this, Eric. But there's a range of people that I've heard from that have said that they've tried to do something over the last.
I know. Yeah, I know people have reached out. I personally haven't, because I've not. I like Nick, and he comes on the show, but I don't know him that well, and I hate being that person that's like, "Hey, buddy, hey," but I felt like it was inappropriate. But I have talked to a lot of other people, and they're like, "Yeah, this person's reached out, that person's reached out," and people who are close to him have been trying.
Yeah, it takes a long time. It takes a long time to get to the end of where you are.
What's your experience with that? And how? Well, I guess two things. My understanding is that unless somebody wants to help, nothing works.
Oh, absolutely. There's nothing.
And then the second part is
you got to be.
Do they get there? I mean, how often they get there, and what usually works for that person to internally click?
Well, first of all, they gotta surrender and be done. You got to say, my life is unmanageable. I want to stop, and I can't. That's real. My life has become unmanageable. I want to stop, and I can't stop. That's number one. If you think you can keep using and keep your life, there's people who are in jail who are saying my life is manageable. I mean, I've had drug lawyers go into the men's house of detention here in LA and say the judge is willing to give you rehab or a year in jail and take the year in jail. So, I mean, think about that insanity. The people who are not done, who are willing to stay in jail for that period of time. So it depends on your mindset, but you've got to be done. Nobody can make you done except yourself. I know guys who've gone to 28 rehabs, 28. That's the highest I've ever heard. Rock and roll people mostly, who had, good insurance or whatever the thing was. And the Grammy Foundation will pay for a lot of people's rehabs out here. If you're in the music business, SAG has a program. It's different programs, but there are guys who will go forever, Robert. If you've got a safety net with money and you're not done, as Sam Kinison famously said, if you have $100,000 in the bank, you don't need rehab. And Kinison died on the 15 in a head-on collision loaded on cocaine with a newcomer 30-day chip in his pocket, from going to AA. So, you got to really be done for this. But, what I realize, it's not for people who need it. It's not for people who want it. It's only for people who do it. The recovery part, if that makes any sense. A judge can't sentence you to it. The judge can only say, I sentence you to, 3 months in rehab, but there's plenty of ways to screw off in rehab and not take it seriously and just act as if, or you can write a fifth step in your journal and have it found like the president's daughter.
Yeah, exactly. Now and how much of it is psychological versus neurological?
Okay, so it's mental, it's physical, and it's spiritual. It's a threefold disease. That's why it's complicated. It's a spiritual malady, it's a physical malady, and it's a psychological malady. So it's all three at once. So it needs to be hit from all three sides. There are people who quit using, but they're just the angriest people on the face of the earth. If you've ever run into a guy who used to drink heavily and he just said, "Yeah, I quit. I ain't drinking anymore." Or the same thing. It's unless you've got a program and a way of life to change too, it's very difficult to do it long term. Anybody could quit, for a month and for Lent or whatever that is, but it's really rare that somebody could just put everything down and walk away.
And what is the success rate? How many?
Well, it depends what you're doing. In 12-step programs, it could be extremely high, the success rate. There's a UCLA study that came out 2 years ago that Dr. Drew and I were in complete wonderment about, a really, really deep study that showed almost an 80 to 85% success rate in AA if you do it by the book after 2 years. After you get to 2 years or 5 years, kind of like you're home free if you continue to work in that area. So the first year is the toughest. This first year is people can't get it together. But if you could get to 2 years, you've got a good chance of making it.
Is there a parallel, Mark? I think we've discussed it before to that. The less money, the better the treatment.
Well, okay, so there's different levels of treatment. They have a working class level of treatment that Impact out here, Cry Help, Claire Foundation. Most cities have that. Then there's a mid-level, which is like a Betty Ford or Hazleton, and then there's the upper Malibu level where it's just literally like a spa, Robert, where they have horticulture and art classes and equine therapy with horses and a whole mess of spa-like things. I remember when Trump's first wife was going to the rehab out in Malibu, and she had her dog with her. They had a 5-star chef in there. She was able to bring in a gigolo to have sex with her at night. And people are going, what the hell is this? You know, I mean, and it was they catered to her as a spa, you know, like a spa. And I don't know if she got clean from that adventure or not, but if you've got a lot of money, there's someone who'll take it in this industry and give you what you want without having it get uncomfortable for you.
But I meant like AA is free, technically.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And one of the most effective things.
Yeah, it's the only thing I've ever seen work. I mean, you could go to Impact or you could go to any of these places. They're all the people who work there are in the program. Everyone who works there is someone is either mostly in Narcotics Anonymous or Alcoholics Anonymous, former gang members or drug counselors, and they will roll you into Narcotics Anonymous or Alcoholics Anonymous and you know, beat you down psychologically and verbally until you stay in there. Or you could just leave, you know, and go back to what you were doing. There's no lock on the door. You know what I mean?
What's the difference between Narcotics versus Alcoholics Anonymous? I mean, it's
nothing. It's just they focus more on narcotics in Narcotics Anonymous. It was a spin-off 1953 off of AA. They had like a schism because they were tired of talking about alcohol and they were tired of hearing about heroin. So it's exactly the same organization. They just focus on narcotics.
Okay, I didn't know if it was more effective one way or another.
No. It's just they focus on narcotics. There are people who are straight up drug addicts, heroin addicts, who don't drink. And the reverse is true. There's tons of alcoholics that don't take drugs. So if you're hearing a guy come into a program and start talking about heroin all day long, you're just going like, what am I sitting here? I don't even know what this guy's talking about. So they have different spin-offs. There's, you know, Gamblers Anonymous spun out of that, Overeaters Anonymous. The whole model remains the same. You know, it's really just crushing your own ego and getting out of your own way and finding some power greater than yourself, which is, when I say power greater than yourself, it's really about the suppression of your ego. That's what all these programs are about. You could choose whatever you want as that higher power, a tree, a classical god, the universe, the ocean. People choose whatever they want. They allow you to choose a power greater than yourself. That's designed to get you out of the driver's seat, that you're not a higher power. You have to pick something else other than that. And it's really about crushing your ego, because your ego is so large, as Rekieta's probably is right now, that unless you crush that down and surrender, it's a tough game. Can
I address this in the chat real quickly, because people keep saying it over and over and they don't know what they're talking about.
There's nothing to address. He doesn't know what he's talking about.
No, AA is a cult.
Sure. Who's the
First
leader?
You have to
who's
know.
The leader? Who's the leader?
Bingo. In order to be in a cult,
there's nothing to address.
You have to have a central figure. So you automatically are just wrong when you call something a
most
cult.
revolutionary movement in the 20th century.
Yeah, I mean, and the success rate speaks for itself.
The success rate, and it's really a revolutionary movement.
There's
no money, there's no cult leader. Other than that, it's a cult.
Well, there's no hierarchy whatsoever.
There's no hierarchy. It's all
with
anonymous.
a cult. You see bad results, right? I mean, you see bad.
Hey, look at the HBO series, the 4-part series on Synanon last month. Fantastic series. You want to see a cult? This is a guy who was an alcoholic. Created a heroin addiction cure group, which became a cult around him, spun it off out of Narcotics Anonymous, created his own group out in Santa Monica in the 50s, and it became a national front page Time magazine, one of the biggest cause celebs. Everybody from the president of the United States on down dealt with this cult, which was Synanon. And it went crazy. They got weapons, Bob. They got guns.
The ego thing really explains a lot, because the other component with that is, I've always told people there's two things that break people, and there's one that everybody knows, kind of, stress. It's like the other is success. I've seen success destroy people faster than anything, but that makes sense as to why that is. It's that
there's a genetic component. There's a genetic component too. You can have a family genetic
predisposition.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, both my parents were addicts. I didn't have a chance in the world. I mean, I had an Irish dad and a fat Jewish addicted mother who ate food addictively. So, I mean, depending on where your family, it's usually a family disease, as the Irish know. The Irish really know it.
And I assume that's the neurological, biological part.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There might be a gene for it. Dr. Drew and I talk about it a lot, called androgenesis, which may be the addictive gene that's in it. But again, the older your culture, the less alcoholism there is in your culture. The Chinese and the Jews have the least amount of alcoholism of any culture on the earth. The more recent that you're given alcohol and drugs,
Indians, for example.
We call them Native Americans and Aborigines. Those two groups have the highest level of addiction in the world because they were exposed to alcohol and drugs 5 minutes ago in Darwin terms. So they were just recently exposed. In theory, in a Darwinian model, the Jews and Chinese who were alcoholics and drug addicts died off centuries ago. So the survivors are the ones interbreeding. With the Native American culture, which may have an alcoholism rate as high as 92%, Robert. I mean, it's astounding. The the rate in the general population is about 10, in the United States. Chinese super low, Jews super low, Aborigines in Australia, 90%, because both were recently exposed as a culture by Western man. If you read Lewis and Clark and their journals, how they had to deal with the Indians and protect the alcohol that they brought with them, the barrels of alcohol, you could see how difficult it was for Lewis and Clark. So,
yeah,
interesting. There was some legal confusion about the bail terms. The way Minnesota structures is they give you an alternative. Mm-hmm. You can either post a certain amount and then you're put under no restraints other than showing up for court, or you can be out on your personal recognizance and then you have all the restraints. So if with Rekieta, they gave him and his wife, you could take post 50 grand, which usually means $5 grand because the bond
10%. Yeah.
And then you're under no restrictions, no drug testing, nothing.
That's what I figured. Yeah.
Or you don't pay anything, and then you are under drug and alcohol restrictions.
Right. They also have drug courts set up around the country. They kind of dissipated over during COVID. But a drug court is when your attorney is in cahoots with the prosecutor and the judge, and all three of them have you plead guilty to everything, send you to rehab, no jail, and then they just test you periodically.
Right. The thing is, he's in a small county, so I don't know if that impacts what courts are available and what court. He's going to have some other issues. He's been very publicly critical of some of the judges and prosecutors.
Yeah, apparently the one handling his defamation case is handling his criminal case.
Oh my God, that's bizarre.
At least from what I heard today, because when a county's that small, you have very few judges.
Right.
So that's the risk. Now that's another reason to have is a separate counsel in. If you think the court's going to be biased, then get a different judge assigned. And all of that and raise that issue, but have it not be the person to raise it.
Usually personal use on cocaine is about 5 grams. To be sitting there with 25 grams, that is a tough road to hoe, for personal use, Robert. That gets to the level
That's what I was wondering. Is it?
Yeah. When you get close to an ounce, 28 grams being an ounce, it becomes all of a sudden you're a dealer, whether you're dealing or not.
Well, and it was in multiple parts too, so that really is not good.
Yeah.
And they seized the scale.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Oh boy, that's not good.
That's why you want to get ahead of this fast. Right? Getting out, you get a sophisticated lawyer.
Yeah, he should not have a scale.
People go to rehab, and you cut a deal fast before the case goes deeper. And you're all of a sudden it's out of your control. And when I saw him trying to pretend he could still control all of this, I was like, this is a disaster. And I didn't plan on saying anything, but I was like, I'm going to publicly say this is a disaster. Hope at least.
It could save his life. It could save his life. I mean, this is not going to end well if he continues down this road. I mean, just watch the show Intervention if you want to see how badly.
And I heard some people say, because this came up as part of the debate, whether people, if we'd known sooner, if I'd known, should you do interventions? I've heard different claims on interventions in this.
Yeah, it varies. I mean, they did one on Hunter Thompson, and he sometimes they go berserk. Yeah, they go berserk.
Hunter, I would be terrified.
He banned everyone from his life who was involved in the intervention, and then blew his head off. So, I mean, then Elliott Smith, the singer-songwriter, intervention on Elliott Smith, same thing happened. It's a weird situation because, I mean, look at Britney Spears. I mean, she's back. Apparently, looks like she's back on meth again. I was running a rehab where her mother and her showed up trying to find a rehab. This was, 10 years ago, Robert. She got the conservatorship. Whatever happened, she was freed from that conservatorship, and now she's out of control. I mean, to basically say it, she's out of control, and I don't think it's going to end well for her, to be honest. So, right. It's hard because you can't control your own destiny and just say, I'm going to stop using. But you've also got people making money off of you. If you're a musician who's going on the road or an actor, they tried so many things. Take Anne Heche, for instance. Anne Heche, people don't know this. My friend was Thomas Jane was her boyfriend, and they were intimate together for a number of years. They tried to do interventions on her. This is before a year or two before this happened. She fired them all. She quit. She got other representation. So, I mean, look at it from the management point of view. If we do this, we're going to lose the client. If we don't do it, we're going to lose the client. It's a very delicate dance that they have to go through. I think she was with Paradigm. Not that it matters, but they did multiple interventions on Anne Heche. People don't know this. They think there's some conspiracy that Anne Heche was murdered. It's just absurd. She was spiraling out of control for a number of years. But nevertheless, the point is it's a difficult dance for your handlers to deal with.
So if someone came to you and said, what should we do? What would there's a couple ways to do this. You could have a sober companion go with the guy. If he's contracted to do something like a movie, you can have a guy with him 24/7 to do the movie. For instance, there's so much money at stake in a movie, and he's getting $5 million to do this picture, and he wants to do it, and he insists on doing it. The studio now insists for bonding to get a bond for the picture. The studio insists that they have a sober companion. And there are people who just have companies here who interface with the studios to provide someone to go with that person so the movie can be bonded. It's now completely a solidified operation out here in Hollywood for these types of cases, because a guy using can blow up $150 million picture. You know what I'm saying? If he's unchaperoned, Robert, and they want, it happened with Downey. I mean, it's happened with a lot of actors where, they have to be bonded now. They have to have a sober companion with them. They have to be tested. These are now the rules to put together $150 to $200 million picture.
That seems cheap, actually. I mean, as much money is involved, paying somebody to hang out because totally and I would tell the actor, it's like, here's your $20 million salary. You pay for your own sober companion out of that.
A lot of them comes out of their pocket, but you don't want the guy to be the employee of the guy you're working for, because he's going to treat you like an employee and just tell you to go F yourself. And
that makes sense.
Yeah. It's better if they work for the studio, but it gives you a degree of separation.
What do you tell like the ordinary person out there that knows somebody in this situation, what they should do?
You just got to go to some meetings. It's free. Just go in. You could leave. You don't like it, do a 90 and 90. Go to 90 meetings in 90 days. You can refund your misery if it doesn't work. You know what I mean? Just like, it's not going to cost you anything. Go to a bunch of meetings. Go to 30 meetings in 30 days and see what happens. It's not the end of the world. If you don't think it works for you, go back to using. But it may just work for you, because you're going to hear your story in there. You're going to hear a guy that says, I am exactly like Nick Rekieta. And it's not going to be a guy who even knows him or anything, but a Nick Rekieta will hear a guy talking about exactly what happened to him, and it'll blow his mind. It's usually what happens. You hear a guy.
It's almost like a mirror. You see that mirror in another person's story.
Yeah. And it's usually somebody who's might have the same age as you, a similar background, or maybe not, but just has the same story that you have. And you go, holy shit. A lot of people said, they thought my wife sent them in there with a phony story to get me hooked on this program. But everybody says the same thing. Everybody says, I went in there, I heard my story, and I stayed around, and I'm alive today because of it. And that's what he's got to do, or anybody's got to do.
There's somebody saying that help to listen to others hiding stuff like I was.
Yeah, that's true, Darcy. That's absolutely true. I mean, there's such a large community. It's so enormous of conventions and meetings in every city in the world. It's just an enormous, enormous society with millions and millions of people. This is not an underground railroad anymore. It's just literally half above ground at this point.
What do you think about, like, generally I've leaned, I'm not a big criminalization fan.
Yeah.
On the flip side, when I was in Cuba, it dawned on me. I was like, why don't they have alcoholics? Why don't they have drug addicts? Oh, it's because they can't get it. I mean, it costs 3 years' salary to get a bottle of rum.
Oh, well, that I don't know.
It's become more and more available. But
yeah,
but I was like, and I was like, that's an argument. I mean, the flip side of that is, I don't think criminalization will ever lead to prohibition as long as there's demand. That in a free society,
lead to prohibition if there's a demand. Well, I'll tell you this: the first 2 years of prohibition in the United States, every crime statistic collapsed, and you can look that up. Domestic violence, robbery, beatings, violence, straight up armed robbery for 2 years. 2 years, and then the Purple Gang and the mob moved in and started making illegal hooch, and the numbers went back up. But there were 2 years. The first 2 years, and it's in my book, so I talked about it in Rehab Nation in my book. The first 2 years, statistically, crime completely collapsed around the country.
So if you could truly,
I don't know if it's sustainable. Right.
That's the key.
I don't know if it's sustainable. I'm just telling you a historic fact.
If you cut off supply, you will cut off the problem.
Yes.
Being in Cuba, though, an island nation, it's a little easier to.
It's a massive surveillance state. I mean,
right.
They plant neighbors to spy on.
I know. I cared for them, and they talked about it. Like,
that's right. You were down there. You're down there in Guantanamo.
Hunley was undercover.
Well, you know how you greet people.
Hunley's in Guantanamo.
He's everywhere.
Langley.
He's everywhere.
CIA buddies.
Quantico.
Right. Hey, I've always been nice to you, Hunley, just for the record.
No, one thing of note with the Cubans is, when you greet somebody, you're like, "Hey, how you doing?" Oh, hey, getting their attention. When I was dealing with the migrants, anytime they wanted to get attention, they go, "Mira," and because they always were going sotto voce, somebody could be watching, and it seeped into their language just around. That's how they would communicate.
Wow.
And the knowledge of the constant censorship creates a self-censorship, or the surveillance. The constant
like me on YouTube. When I yell at you, please don't say that. Please don't do that. But the man's going to get me.
I can't avoid saying the S word on YouTube because I'm dealing with a lot of historic stories where people have self-eliminated themselves, Robert, and it comes up with a bunch of times historically, and I just don't think like that. I know contemporary advertisers don't want to hear you talking about it concurrently with modern day society, but if you're talking about events from the 1900s, and it just comes right out of my mouth because it's certain people did do that.
Right.
All right, we have 4,000 people watching. It would be really cool if you guys would hit the like while you're here, and if you're enjoying this, maybe consider you got that bell with you, Mark?
Hold on. Oh yeah, the bell.
It's like the horse bell. Yeah, it's like the Budweiser horse bell.
No, this is the bell only for subscriptions. So I only ring it once every couple of months, and then we get our subscribers, and then we don't get any new ones for about 6 months. So this is it. I'm going to do it right now. Please stand by. This is a actual bell being used to get subscribers here on America's Untold Stories. If everyone's ready, I don't know where your button is, but get ready to push this button all around the world. Scotland, apparently big base in Scotland, Eric, right? A lot of people in Reykjavik, and now Ireland. They just drink around.
Denmark.
Sweden, yeah. So here's the bell for the EU. There it is.
That's everybody rushing to their computer to hit the button.
Yeah. Hit the notification bell, like, share, subscribe. And, of course, you have a Locals.
We definitely have a Locals. Unstructured.locals.com. It's in the description. And people are watching on Locals right now with their own private chat, so they don't necessarily have to interact with the
we copied what
masses.
you did. We started a party with them afterwards, Robert.
Ah, very good.
Yeah, but Eric and I took it to another level. We take our clothes off and then go over there.
Yeah.
You should have been there. We gave Viva the award.
How was it? How was the Florida?
Dude, it was great. He just kept going back to the buffet, Viva, and he just kept stuffing his face. He was making videos, and he had a great time.
What was the gift?
It was a acrylic, friend of America's Untold Stories is black, with silver text on it. Just something, kind of classy because I hate gaudy trophies and things that you're like, what am I going to do with this? Something like that. It's kind of elegant, and he seemed to like it. So
That's fantastic. Good. That's good.
It was fun. It was a lot of fun.
I assume good number of people. Were they more local people, or did people come from out
of town?
We had Canada, New York,
Texas.
All over.
They came from Texas, right?
Yeah, Texas, Tom. Well, we have some people who have come to every meetup we've had.
So Robert, there's
how many
meetups.
Done? 3, 4?
We've done 3 meetups, and then we also attended the JFK conference last year.
You got what? Texas, Alabama, Ohio, and Florida so far.
Yeah.
So where's the next one?
I'm not
Phoenix,
sure. We need to. What about Phoenix?
Phoenix is good. Phoenix is
you
good.
Can even overlap it with the Alec Baldwin trial.
Oh, I like that idea. I like where he's going with that.
God, that's so close to now, though.
Why don't we go to Santa? It's July 11th.
Won't that trial be at least a month?
It's going to be a month, Eric.
It might be, but I don't know. Well, I mean, we could look at it, but
the guy's trying to get me credentials, so I'd like to get in there with one of these microphones that says America's Untold Stories. And just walk around with even if it's a dead microphone.
Any chance Hundley gets subpoenaed to testify?
Yeah, right. We got Hundley with the prosecution may subpoena Hundley again.
But whatever happened to that subpoena? They go away with it? What do they do?
I've never heard anything. I don't know if she actually did something behind my back and subpoenaed the phone companies.
Whoa.
How would I know?
That's
on
right.
that.
So state nanny.
She could have.
Robert, how is this case going to turn out? They took the other girl away, remanded her to custody. What is going to happen with Alec Baldwin in this case, based on the previous case, who was the armor in the case, getting the book thrown at her?
Yeah, I mean, obviously he can't do her defense, right? Because her defense was, this is really Baldwin, this is really the producers, this is really the big money people. He could borrow aspects of it, and they got to see what worked and what didn't work. Now he'll obviously have a much better presentation.
You think?
Yeah.
I hear he's doing a complete live reenactment of the movie and the shooting with actors coming in.
He's so confident he's going to demand to testify.
Absolutely. I hope he does.
He dug a hole with himself. He's going to think he could redo Johnny Depp. That he could do as good as Depp did on the stand. I mean, I can tell you from the Snipes case, we assumed going in that he had to testify. Then we did all the mock trials and the focus groups, figured out he couldn't testify because the jurors.
Did you rehearse him, by the way, in the testimony?
His testimony was going to be fun. So he was going to get into the entire history of he's going to get into Lysander Spooner, the unconstitutionality of slavery. He's part Native American, the history of the abusive treaties. That he was going to say, look, there's a long history in America of the law actually being one thing on the books, but the law with the people with the badges and the guns and the gavels saying something different than what the law is on the books. And look at the civil rights movement, look at what happened with slavery, look at what happened with Native Americans. And that to him, it was very persuasive that they were doing the same nonsense when it came to taxes.
Right.
So I mean, he would have been a fantastic witness, natural method actor.
Well, he's a method actor. I mean, the guy is completely dynamic.
Completely mid-trial, he got up and he did a version of a lawyer. He goes, Barnes, can you do this? And he like put on little glasses and he was like, did this. I was like, that's fantastic. That's a black Matlock. But no, I can't. I'm not a method actor.
Baldwin's no slouch. I'll tell you that much.
He's an actor. He's a damn good actor.
He's a damn good actor.
His biggest risk is like an addict, ego. The ego, like Snipes was good. He was humble. He was ready. Like after we did our opening statement with, if crazy was criminal, half of Hollywood would be in prison. Our way of softening some of the more eclectic statements they would see made. The Snipes was all for it. He started wearing like the wildest, weirdest ties. He started drawing weird stuff that he knew the jury would see what he was doing. Like, I'm as loco as you need me to be.
Wow, we now call that the Jussie Smollett, but back then it had no name.
No, exactly. And so he was ready to, whatever part needed to be played, he was ready to go. He was not going to jail for 16 years to max security prison.
Wow.
So but we found the focus groups was that fact of him being a great actor meant he couldn't testify because people said, look, anything he does that's effective, I'm going to write off as he's a great actor.
Right.
He makes one mistake. I'm going to say that must be the real truth because he's such a great actor.
Wow.
He would never screw up. And if he screws up, that means he's guilty. So we realized, I mean, like everybody who voted acquittal said, no, he shouldn't testify. Everybody who voted conviction were like, yes, please line him up so that we can nitpick something.
Yeah. And also see that, I don't want to say, a performance monkey, doing dance, right on. That's interesting. So Baldwin's going to have to go through the same thing, Robert.
Yeah, that's the big,
he's going to insist on testifying and his lawyers are going to try to talk him out of it.
And it's always his prerogative.
It's his prerogative.
The key they're going to, my guess is they've already tested it with multiple mock juries.
Absolutely.
And it depends on how good they did that. Because if you screw up the mock jury process, it misleads you about the trial.
Right.
So
now, what about jury selection down there? I mean, it's a Democratic stronghold. Is that a factor anymore? I mean, that's
what they need, a really multi-level test.
Yeah.
They need to figure out how much what life experience creates a juror that will be sympathetic. Like, for example, if she had picked a better jury, she had a potential narrative that could have worked with a particular jury.
I agree.
And but for him, it'll be a little bit different because he's the head honcho. He's
got name recognition and blah, blah, blah,
Correct. So he's going to need people that, you could watch. Like, I think these days you can crowdsource a lot of juror information. Like, look at who defends him and what arguments they use in the court of public opinion, comment feeds in response to your videos, and all of that, I think would be helpful. It would give you some cues and clues. My guess is a third to a half of the jury pool would be inclined to vote not guilty.
Right.
He's got problems because he clearly lied in the prior interview. And my guess he's going to double down on the lie. He probably has to.
Well, there's no gun left. I mean, the FBI destroyed the weapon.
No, they rebuilt it.
No,
and they brought it back.
You're right. That would be something to play with.
Yes.
Where's the gun? What are the government doing with it?
Of course.
If Trump was president, they would really be set up. This is a huge conspiracy. President Trump and the Republican conservatives are trying to take out poor Alec Baldwin. But that is a way you can play on it. I mean,
I thought his argument would be, you got them. You've convicted them. You just want more names. You just want a big name. You've already got Hannah. You've already got Dave Halls. What do you want? You've got the person responsible for everything. You've got the guy who handed me the gun. I trusted the professionals. You've already convicted them. You just want the big name.
That's his defense, Eric. But I mean, she's got the prosecutor.
The problem is lie.
Yeah, the prosecution has other weapons there.
That he didn't pull the trigger.
Right.
When he did. At least I think that's what the evidence will show beyond a reasonable doubt. So I think that's the biggest hurdle. He would have kept his mouth shut.
Do you think he even would have been charged if he kept his mouth shut?
I think he probably would not have got charged if he would have kept his mouth shut. Let other people run defense for him, do it in a sophisticated way,
and just say, "I'm so sorry for what happened in the family." And
I would have settled.
I'll say this:
offered big amounts up front.
The George Soros influence, I think, has now gone out the window with this woman, because the DA, even though she's a George Soros DA, the prosecutor, I just think, is looking for big game hunting.
Oh,
here.
yeah.
Oh, yeah. No doubt about that.
Okay. I just wanted to be clear about that, because
she's I think, she's your classic prosecutor.
Yeah.
I was not a fan of her personality. It struck me as your classic.
Neither was I, personally.
Yeah. Precisely.
Huntley, you're gonna have to take the stand in your own defense.
Yeah. I assume Baldwin brought in some out-of-state people. Is that out-of-state people going to be his lead, or locals?
I would
both. I think he's got a local rep, but he's got Spira out of California.
Is it a New Yorker?
I think L.A.
L.A. So it's mostly LA.
I don't think I would use L.A. either. I would have gone and found the best Texas criminal defense lawyer.
You're talking about Jerry Spence. You're talking about Jerry Spence, bringing him out of 96 years old.
Yeah. Well, the advantage is, so New Mexico has a Texan feel. You're going to have that kind of style of community and jury pool and language, and nobody that says big city. I wouldn't. They can be from Dallas or Houston, but you're good Texas lawyers.
Also, Arizona. You got a lot of Phoenix would be a good place to look too, Barnes. Phoenix and New Mexico.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, Phoenix has some high quality.
Arizona.
And Vegas does too.
Vegas, yeah.
It's just Texas got some of the best in the country.
Well, now her husband, the widow, is a producing partner with Alec Baldwin. He could bring he could subpoena the husband to testify, saying, "I know I killed his wife, but he's my partner now, and he loves me."
And that's what that's what they should have started off with, right? You start off with getting him on your side. You start off with big public settlement resolutions.
Well,
you don't drag it out so that you can nitpick the cash, because it's your life and liberty and reputation on the line, right? I mean, he gets convicted. Whatever happens on the sentencing side, what do you think his Hollywood prospects are if he gets convicted of this?
Oh, it's not going to have any effect at all.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Holy cow.
Not at all. I'll tell you why. Because he's been making.
Because he murdered somebody on a movie set.
Maybe? Well, insurance might be a problem. He can't do anything with guns, right?
No. He's been making indie films for years. These are indie films. True. People throwing in $1 million here, $1 million there.
And seriously, because it is a legitimate firearm. If he is a convicted felon, he can't handle a firearm, or are there exceptions for that?
That's a script by script basis. I mean, what do you think? There's firearms in every Alec Baldwin movie?
No, I just said he couldn't have any movies that had any firearms, I would think.
So, really his only risk is, but isn't his sentencing risk still pretty low here?
I don't know. I'm asking you. I mean,
it's like a year and a half, 2 years. I know
right, it's 18 months, right, Eric?
18 months. Oh, okay.
Max.
So isn't this almost his reputation he's defending?
Yeah, that's all it is.
Kind of. I mean, Hannah would have gotten a much shorter sentence, except for her phone calls.
Right.
Where she was like, this is stupid, da-da-da, and everybody else.
Another example of a lawyer up and let your lawyer handle everything.
Let your lawyer, if he comes in there with 10 lawyers with suits on, Barnes, into Santa Fe, how's that going to look?
Yeah, that's where I would be very careful with. I would not hire New Yorkers or LA people for a New Mexico jury. I just wouldn't. You could do that in Vegas. You could do that in Chicago. You could do a bunch of big cities. Just not New Mexico. It's Albuquerque. They still think of themselves as country cowboys, and the lefties are the lefty. It wouldn't be bad to have a Mexican
Norm Pettis. What about Norm Pettis? How would he do in that kind of trial?
Norm would he'd probably do solid. Norm, he's a really good street lawyer. That's what something right off the street is what is Norm's second. Like, Norm does great in drug cases. That's like right his bread butter. Now, he did a famous murder case in Connecticut.
Wow.
And he did some case in New York. It's maybe because you could sell the ponytail to the hippie crowd left in Albuquerque.
There's a lot of ponytails down there. I think you can buy attached ponytails at a lot of truck stops down there.
Norm doesn't have a big accent or anything, so that wouldn't really be.
And he's taught under. He learned under Jerry Spence, so he's got some of that rhythm.
Anybody that looks like they're bought and paid for. It's somebody that knows how to. I mean, remember, there was a documentary on one of the famous New York real estate guys. I mean, not real estate, investment guys. what's his name? He's the guy that owned one of the airlines for a while.
Freddie Laker, you're talking about?
Not Freddie Lake. It's he just had one done. He was big in sort of mergers and acquisitions, but he helped settle the Texaco case from way back, Pennzoil and all that. And the lawyer that got paid like $1 billion on that case, biggest contingency fee recovery ever. But he described his conversations with that guy, and that guy was like,
well, I hope that Baldwin's wife shows up with different outfits, speaking in the Spanish accent.
Oh God, that'll go over great with the locals.
With paparazzi, she's going to. I mean, he's going to be there a long time, Eric. He's not going to be separated,
dude. If she does that, that's going to piss the locals off.
He said he's bringing 11 of his 22 children into the trial.
You would, the kids are always helpful.
Oh,
you don't think his wife would be particularly helpful?
No, not in New Mexico where they speak actual Spanish, and they're not from Massachusetts.
That's a cheap shot. You're saying she's not Spanish. You're saying she's a phony Spaniard.
Doesn't she fancy herself as?
Let's just say her birth name was Hillary, and she suddenly merged into Hilaria.
My name is Hilaria.
Yeah, she could go, man. This was a.
She also uses a prosthetic stomach when she has the false. Allegedly, according to Reddit.
Well, Reddit is evil, though. I think of it. Reddit.
Well, those women are on her. Those mothers on Reddit. There's a whole thread on Reddit, Robert, that are just onto her phony.
Reddit pregnancies. Is vicious. But by the way, Pasha has a great idea for a meetup. I didn't even think about it. He's like, places 200 miles from me: Fargo, Sioux Falls, Duluth, Des Moines, Madison. There's a hearing coming up August 20th. I don't know if that would be a meetup location in Minnesota.
Right.
That's funny. That's funny.
Yeah,
I'd like to have one in my backyard one time so I could just roll out of bed into a meetup. I don't know if that's too much to ask, but
Madison's pretty nice that time of year.
These places still have snow on it. I was in Palm Beach yesterday on the beach itself, and people were showing me their pictures of their backyards, still covered with snow in Montana and South Dakota, North Dakota. And this is
yeah, that's right. We were interviewing Jeremy Carlin. He's in Montana, and it was snowing while we were
right. Yeah. Wow. I mean, there's a lot of places.
Was in a hailstorm in late April in Madison, Wisconsin.
Wow. Well, have you practiced law in Wisconsin or Minnesota, right?
Wisconsin, yep.
Wisconsin. Okay.
And my brother was a philosophy professor at St. Thomas in St. Paul. Now there's last time every single Uber driver was Somalian, so I was like, that's interesting. Like I knew there was a decent immigration because Ilhan Omar is congresswoman from there now, but I didn't realize because also the Hmong years ago resettled there from the Cambodian conflict. But yeah, it was interesting. It was reminding me of London. Like when I was in London, every single Uber driver was named Mohammed.
Well, interestingly enough, here we have the largest Vietnamese community outside of Vietnam in LA, Garden Grove, and other areas around there. And the LA City Council voted unanimously last week to declare that particular day last week every year to be Jane Fonda Day in Los Angeles. And they went batshit crazy, Robert. The Vietnamese. The survivors of the war remember how she manned an anti-aircraft gun with the North Vietnamese, put on Viet Cong pajamas, put on a helmet, posed for all sorts of pictures, making believe she was shooting down American airmen. She is one of the most hated. Oh, here it is, Eric. Yeah. The Vietnamese community furious over LA's. You talk about tone deaf.
Huge Vietnamese population in Orange County.
It's the largest Vietnamese community in the world outside of Vietnam. Yep. And they are livid that they've decided out of the blue, again, completely tone deaf things that they do here, to have it Jane Fonda Day.
Hanoi Jane.
Hanoi Jane. In fact, they should just call it Hanoi Jane Fonda Day.
Yeah. Also a huge Cambodian population.
Yes.
There in Long Beach.
Yes.
I finally got around to watching the famous film, The Killing Fields.
Killing Fields, yeah.
I mean, rough film, but very informative film, and a beautiful film by the end of the film. But because it exposes all the insanity of what Nixon was doing, and sort of the deep state operation there, and the insanity of the ideology of communism.
By the way, I finally got around to seeing Napoleon, and the battle scenes are unbelievable. I don't know.
Did you like him or no? I mean, I heard.
I loved it. I thought it was. It's still Ridley Scott. It's still Joaquin Phoenix. I don't know what people are crying about.
Okay.
So it was good.
Absolutely.
Was it not woke enough for somebody? And so now they're
I don't know what the problem was, but
well, I think they kind of the criticism was that they eviscerated the character of Napoleon.
That I don't know. Yeah.
Okay. Now, have you seen the Ungentlemanly? What's the name of it? Ungentleman. So it's about these groups that go attack the Nazis in secret. And it's called what's amazing. It's had almost.
Is it the one that just came out?
Hey, yeah, it has Henry Cavill in it.
I watched the other Henry Cavill one, and it was pretty bad.
Which one was that?
It was done by the same guy that did Kick-Ass. It just came out. They came out the same time, and it's on like Apple TV or one of those. It kind of sucked.
Robert, you'd love the Fabulous Gemstones. Because it's
that's pretty good. That's pretty good. Well, what's his name is really funny.
I knew you'd like that.
It's hard to avoid.
I mean, there's a lot of southern preacher stuff down there, and I think they go to Chattanooga in one episode.
Oh yeah, it's the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare.
What is that? What is that?
So it's about apparently a group that went behind that sort of was kind of like an Inglourious Bastard style,
right?
Sabotaging the Nazis, the sort of unapproved.
There really was the real Inglourious Bastards, which is a great documentary about these Jews who actually did that. To me is far more interesting than Tarantino's film. The real group of Jews who did that. If you could find it's called The Real Inglourious Bastards. If you could find it, fascinating documentary about some bloodthirsty Nazi-hating Jews, which is my kind of crowd.
All right, let me go through some super chats and memberships. Dick Dickerson gifted 20 memberships. Dickerson's
how does that work, by the way?
Yeah, what does that mean?
Well, essentially, they buy memberships and they give them out to different people. And if they want to continue to support the channel, then they'll renew their membership, and it helps us grow. And it's kind of a way of spreading the wealth, so to speak, versus just dropping $100 or whatever.
So they decide who those memberships.
Correct. They pick it out, people that are making good comments and things like that. Then they just gift them the membership or whatever. And then Dustin, we know Dustin. Dustin is one of the people who has been to every meetup, as well as the JFK conference.
Wow.
So amazing.
Likes to gamble too, Robert. You'd love this guy. Goes to Indian casinos and wins.
Yep, and Blitzen's he's going to keep in here too. He gave 20 memberships as well.
By the way, the Seminoles have hooked up with Hard Rock Cafes in Florida, where the Seminole Indians are running gambling in Florida with the Hard Rock as a institution.
And they're kind of blocking other people's access to the sports betting market because right now.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. Interesting.
Yeah, it's always that, because of the old stories about that what prevented legalized gambling in a lot of places was actually the mob. Because they would remember it was referenced in the movie The Last Boy Scout. But what they figured out in time was that their credit-based system meant that they were not going to be threatened by legitimate sports books, because those sports books you got to put down the cash to bet, whereas your bookie will lend you credit. Say, you tell me they just write down how much it is and collect it the next week.
Did you see the Tulsa Kings, by the way, with Stallone?
That's good.
Good series.
I like that. That was good.
I knew you'd like that.
That was right up your
alley. That was a good series.
Well, Sheridan seems to be a hell of a writer. I mean, he's putting out Yellowstone, Tulsa King.
1886 and 1923 were not very good.
I liked it. I liked 1883 and 1923. They were both good.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. Especially 1883. That one was harsh. I mean, it was like.
Or any of them bomb? Did any of them bomb?
No.
I think they did okay.
The guy's on fire right now. I don't think he's had anything bomb for a while. I mean, it's like he wrote Sicario, then picked up this stuff, and he's just been going bonkers.
Did you see the Gentleman by the Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels director?
Guy Ritchie?
Guy Ritchie, yes. It's a limited series. That was good, right? Yeah, it was very good.
I haven't seen that yet. No.
Yeah, it's a series, a limited series.
Okay, let me see. Scott Bimbo. The trip to Mexico was a bust as far as Go subscribers. I'm saying they're crafty. I did get bit twice by one of those Belgian cop dogs for petting another dog at the dog rescue.
Scott
goes around, and whenever he's in a hotel, he subscribes to America's Untold Stories.
Yeah, he's one of our biggest subscribers because he travels a lot. So he comes up with ghost subscriptions, Robert. That's put us at 110,000 recently.
111, Mark. 111. We're on fire.
Well, I think 1,000 were some other people, but
it could be.
He's done 110,000 himself.
What's a Croker situation?
Oh, a Croker is a phony doctor, not a real doctor who will give drugs and drug subscriptions to drug addicts.
Like Michael Jackson's doctor?
Dr. Feelgood.
Yeah. Well, Feelgood would be a personal concierge doctor. A Croker is a guy you go to and pay him X amount of money on the side to get a prescription for opiates or whatever.
Oh, okay.
It comes from William Burroughs from the book Junkie, by the way, if you want to read Junkie by William Burroughs.
Okay. Dusty Storm said, Nick stated months ago he was on meds for narcolepsy. Ketamine is a treatment.
Again, good luck with that treatment. I think Joe Rogan loves ketamine too.
A lot of people do. Al Gonzalez has a good question here. Mark, do you consider today's marijuana as a gateway drug? And why does pot smell so awful now? At least in the 70s, it was tolerable, LOL.
Right. It's not even the same drug. It's like a comparison to 101 proof bourbon, Wild Turkey compared to a beer, if that makes any sense in the alcohol drinking department. The old 70s, 80s marijuana that Al was talking about has about as much THC. It's not even close to what the current marijuana has. And we're talking about edibles. We're talking about the increase in ER visits has gone through the roof. There's people taking it now. You don't know the amount of THC that's in edibles because it's mixed in a vat and may not be equally distributed throughout the edibles. All kinds of different reasons. But the fact of the matter is, the cannabis that's being consumed now is like steroids compared to the old 70s Cheech and Chong cannabis.
Well, and there's also an issue, and this is on our docket for today, actually, that they're having the cannabis poisonings. And so they have like the pot brownies or whatever. And, this is really good. I'll have 3 or 4.
Yeah,
so
I think the edibles is really a Russian roulette type thing where a lot of seniors and kids are showing up in the ER because they don't know what they're getting into when they ingest the edible. Even though they print the blah, blah, blah on the label, it's erratic.
But isn't it also their age and whether they can process it in their system as well as somebody younger or what have you? I mean, that's kind of scary.
But it is a gateway drug. I actually believe that, and I'm not alone in that. I mean, it's so powerful. And I know you're going to write in and say, I've been smoking pot my whole life. It's the only thing I ever do. I know. It's not about you, Bob. It's about
you, Joe Rogan.
It's not about you, Joe Rogan. There are other people besides you. Everybody always personalizes these mass studies to themselves. You know what I mean? If you read Alec Berenson's book, I think it's called Tell Your Children, where his wife ran an ER room in New York. I think it was New York. I forgot what the ER was, but she began to see massive amounts of people coming in from a cannabis abuse in the ER, and that's what spawned the book that he wrote.
Wow. By the way, that was another thing that happened apparently when, unfortunately, when Nick and Kayla were arrested. I guess Kayla asked the police for her prescription medicine, and it turns out that it was not prescribed medicine, and there's like a gummy inside of the thing too.
That's why you hire a lawyer right away. The lawyer would have handled all that, would have known to anticipate this, would have managed it correctly. That's why, and Nick's in complete denial.
Well, when you're high as a kite, it's hard to make rational decisions, Robert. I mean, if you're that's kind of the problem. Nobody's in charge of this guy, so he's going to make decisions based on his current mental state, which is not good.
The other thing is, it's amazing how people in the throes of addiction, they're brilliant at gaslighting. The smarter you are, the worse it is, because you're even better at lying to yourself.
Yeah.
And you're better at gaslighting anybody asking you anything.
The same is true with recovery. The same is true with
any
recovery.
vulnerability you have.
The smarter you are, the harder it is to get clean and sober. And if you're a little bit less, it's easier to take.
Right. Well, the key part is what you identified. It's ego.
Yeah, ego's not, as we say, as famous saying out here, your ego is not your amigo.
Yeah, it's a good way to phrase
it. I think a lot of the gangbangers say it a lot in Narcotics Anonymous.
I love it. David Smith said, I enlisted in the Marines in the 80s when there were Vietnam vets still serving. Hanoi Jane is still hated among veterans. Bring her up at your local VFW American Legion if you want to start a fight.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yes. Yeah. Not Henry Fonda, who played the president in the movie Failsafe, with a I Dream of Jeannie actor named Larry Hagman playing his interpreter, speaking to the Russian prime minister, Russian president at the time. And Hagman said to me, many people thought he spoke Russian, but what he does in the scenes is he's kind of doing like a Russian gibberish thing. And he never spoke a word of Russian in Failsafe as the interpreter for Henry Fonda, Jane's father.
Oh, wow. Amazing. Now, Barnes, hopefully you want to hang out a little bit more, but we always, right about this time, we head over to Locals for the after party. And
I can do like 10 minutes over on Locals.
Awesome. Oh, that's good.
Awesome.
That's good.
Keep hanging out. And we got one more sneaking in. Last minute, you always get the super chat sliding at the last second here. Will Biden stay off the ballot in Ohio since they took him off the ballot? How's this work out?
They're going to cut a deal. So Republicans want Democrats to go along with something legislatively that's going to help them for the election. And as the precondition to get Biden on the ballot, Democrats are likely going to have to go along with it.
Look for disruption of the convention because press passes.
Chicago, what a smart idea.
Yeah.
So there's a Kennedy running. You got a populist challenger like Trump. Yeah. We got the hard left really mad. Where should we do the convention? Chicago. Yeah, why not?
It's going to be a shit show, but the beauty is it's not a conservative daily now. It's a left-wing Marxist mayor who I believe is going to let them in through the front door.
Somebody should propose to the lefties they should take back over the park. Recreate 1968.
Oh, I think it'll be reenactments the night before, without a doubt. Without a doubt. I mean, this is
my favorite stories is Buchanan and Mailer hanging out in a hotel room overlooking the park, watching the whole melee. It's like, can you imagine?
Yeah,
that would be
well, I mean, also the tear gas wafting into the convention floor.
Yeah, Hunter Thompson was there behind the scenes.
Yeah, absolutely. Dan Rather was shoved around by Daley's men.
Well, let's continue this
conversation. He called Abraham Ribicoff a Jewish son of a bitch from the floor. Go back to Connecticut, you Jewish son of a bitch. I wasn't even a lip reader, and my family was able to read that.
Yep. All right, we're going to continue this topic of conversation over on Locals.
Come on over.
We'll
keep
see
it going
you there.
Over there.
There's a link in the description. See you there.